the seats in the concert hall go up together and they bang against the back of the chair. So you get this thump from all the chairs in the room as everyone stands, and then you get their round of applause. It's a double celebration.
The room is celebrating as well.
The room is celebrating, exactly.
What does it mean to celebrate science? In this special bonus episode of Nobel Prize Conversations, we set out on a journey of exploration into scientific celebrations. From late-night eureka moments in the lab to the cheerful flap of seats during the Nobel Prize award ceremony in Stockholm. I'm Karin Svensson, producer of this podcast, and in this episode my guest is Adam Smith, Chief Scientific Officer at Nobel Prize Outreach, and, usually, the host of Nobel Prize Conversations. We cover the glamour and the grit, the joy and the importance of celebrating science, and how the awarding of a Nobel Prize touches many more people than the individual laureate.
There are rings of celebration emanating out from this one person. People claiming the laureate. This is our laureate from our university. It's from our town. This is from our family, whatever. But you could also just nicely say sharing in it.
This podcast was produced in cooperation with Fundación Ramón Areces. As we're about to find out who will become this year's new Nobel Prize laureates, I started by asking Adam how he feels about the upcoming announcement season.
Excited as ever. This is the point in the year when that baton is handed from one group to the next group who become the new laureates with all the attention focused on them. And of course, that's a very exciting time when we learn the names of the people who are to be this year's laureates, start finding out what makes them tick.
When we started talking about making this episode, we were both inspired by something 2024 Physiology or Medicine laureate Victor Ambrose said in your conversation about his fear of receiving a Nobel Prize. Shall we listen to it?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Actually, in my darkest hours, let's say years ago, right, I might have thought, well, what would it be like to win the Nobel Prize, right? Because people would come up to me and say something like that. And I would think, Jesus, that would be so scary, so awful, right? Because I would have to pretend, I'd feel like it was a lie. You know what I mean? But instantly, when I walked onto campus that morning, everybody was so happy, right? And strangers were coming up to me. I realized, whoa, I see what this is about. It's about making people happy about science and about their institution. The University of Massachusetts got all excited. Everybody on campus was so genuinely happy for us and happy for the institution. The state of Massachusetts is happy. And so you realize, wow, this is what it's all about. I'm just the excuse for folks to be happy about being involved in science.
Yeah, I suppose only the most curmudgeonly person could resist the sort of joy around you from your institution, from your loved ones, perhaps your collaborators, and fail to just enjoy the moment of hearing the news and finding out that you're to be one of the new laureates. I mean, there are lots of reasons to be scared of getting the prize, I'm sure. Not least the interruption to your life and your work. But it is a celebratory moment, and it absolutely, I think the best possible use of the prize is that it celebrates the sort of work that leads to the prize. It celebrates science or literature or, of course, trying to bring peace.
What does it mean to celebrate science?
That's a very good question. It's an easy phrase to say. I suppose to get people to pay attention to science, the Nobel Prize has become such an attention-grabbing thing that the announcement of a Nobel Prize in science gets people to stop for a moment and think about what goes into that prize and to revel in the fact that all these people around the world are exploring how the world works and trying to make sense of it all. And from all that work comes all the things we know and enjoy, like medical improvements or new devices or whatever. But the actual process of getting there is something that doesn't get thought about all that much by a lot of people. And it's just nice to take this moment to say an amazing thing has happened and somebody has come up with an amazing result, and we should take pleasure in that. So I suppose that's what we mean by celebrate science.
But are scientists good at celebrating their discoveries?
Yeah, I think they probably are. There's so many reasons not to celebrate when you're a scientist. It goes wrong most of the time. That I think, yes, they are good at enjoying the moments of success or the steps forward. Most people, I suppose, when confronted with science, ask, well, what's that good for? What's it going to give you? How's it going to help? Those are very good questions. Yeah. But most of the time, science isn't about that question. It's about, how does this work? What's going on here? Do I understand this? And it's that is being celebrated most of the time with a Nobel Prize, playing around with nature and trying to work out what's going on. And it's that process, which is absolutely fundamental to all the applications, which is being celebrated when people take notice of what a Nobel Prize has been given for.
So Donna Strickland, the 2018 physics laureate, had some interesting things to say about this in her Nobel banquet speech, where she spoke about the night of the discovery that awarded her the prize.
I will never forget that night. It is truly an amazing feeling when you know that you have built something that no one else ever has, and it actually works. There really is no excitement quite like it, except for maybe getting woken up at 5 a.m, because the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences also thinks it was an exciting moment for the field of laser physics.
Yeah, she puts her finger on it. Anyone who's had a career doing research or any time doing research has had moments, which somehow often occur at night, don't know why, when something exciting happens in front of you. And those moments of enjoyment and perhaps celebration with your colleagues, if there's anybody else around, are incredibly powerful. Something that you've tried to make work yourself and has been your own achievement or your team's achievement. But anyway, you're involved very directly in that achievement. Those celebrations are truly the most memorable. And it's nice that she draws the connection between these two moments, one a very private or relatively private celebration and one a very public celebration. What could be more public?
But it's also like she wants to say that the really important celebration happened on the night, and then this is sort of mirrored in what's going on in that banquet hall.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that, of course, is the key point. This nice question of whether you should want to get a Nobel Prize, whether you should be aiming to get a Nobel Prize. And the vast majority of Nobel laureates would answer that question with, of course you shouldn't. It's absolutely not your intention to go out there and get a Nobel Prize. You should simply be trying to do interesting work. And if the Nobel Prize comes along, well, lucky you. But there are those who would say the opposite. They would say, of course you should be trying to get a Nobel Prize, because if you're not trying to get a Nobel Prize, then what are you trying to do? If you're not trying to do something that's important enough, should it succeed, to get you the Nobel Prize,
if you're trying not to get a Nobel Prize.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Aim high. If you're going to aim anywhere, aim high. The main point is that what mattered was getting the machine to work, in her case.
But 2021 chemistry laureate Benjamin List is a proponent of celebrations as an important part of doing science. So let's listen to what he had to say on this when you called him on the day of the announcement.
Whenever we have something to celebrate, we celebrate it. Like we like to occasionally, when somebody has a nice little discovery, then we have a little party in our seminar room. And we had our international dinner last week, where my group, of course, it's composed of many different nationalities, and each of them brought a special food from his or her own country. And there was this moment we tried all the food, and everybody gave a little speech about, the style of his country and this internationalism and respect for each other, this diversity. And there was this moment I was among my graduate students, and I had goosebumps on my head because I was enjoying this so much, to work with these amazing, happy and creative people. It's such a gift already.
That's someone who knows how to celebrate.
Very much so. He raises some important points. For a start, diversity. He really highlights the diversity of scientists and the lovely global international thing that science is and should be, and that anyone putting up barriers to that and trying to nationalize science is barking up the wrong tree. The other thing he highlights, and of course we all know this, is that the Nobel Prize is so focused on individuals, and yet science is a collective enterprise where teams of people work together And there's a bit of a dichotomy there that almost all Nobel laureates in the sciences, as soon as they receive the prize, will start talking about how important the teams have been and their collaborators and all this. It is a great celebration of that joint effort while being focused on the individual. It's really lovely the way that teams get mentioned and get involved and that they get invited to the celebrations and that they share in the joy of the award of the prize. And it's very nice that that gets highlighted. Occasionally you get individual geniuses who are so out there that they are solely responsible for a discovery, but more often than not, there must be some give and take with the people around you that helps contribute. And so it's just lovely that the team gets recognised as well.
Science is the star of this episode, but our conversation will also venture into the realms of peace and literature and how those prizes are celebrated. First, though, a topic which concerns all laureates, the timeline of celebrating the Nobel Prize. First, we have announcement day. How is that usually celebrated by the laureates?
When they get a moment to do anything other than talk to the press and people like me phoning them up. Well, I mean, from beginning to end, it's a joyous day. It depends how you define celebration. If celebration is purely a party, then they probably don't get much of a chance that first day. But if celebration is a conversation with lots of happy people, be them journalists or your colleagues and, meeting in press conferences, being taken in and congratulated by the head of your institute and maybe getting some phone calls from very important people. I remember when I was trying to call Gerhard Ertl when he got the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. It was quite hard to get him, it was quite hard to get him actually to stay on the line. He answered the phone immediately, but he was waiting for a phone call from the German president. and so every time he answered, he'd answer immediately and then be very disappointed that I wasn't the German president. Said, "I'm sorry, I can't talk. I'm waiting for the German president," and hang up. And I just kept going. I left a decent interval to allow the president to call, but eventually he gave up and said, "All right, I'll talk to you instead." And all of this is surely celebration of a sort.
I mean, the universities and the institutions go into sort of overdrive in terms of celebrating themselves as well. It's like this whole thing that sort of snowballs from this initial announcement.
Yeah, absolutely. There are rings of celebration emanating out from this one person. People, you might say, slightly claiming the laureate. This is our laureate from our university. This is from our town. This is from our family, whatever. But you could also just nicely say sharing in it, that it touches many different groups of people and individuals and institutions. Yeah, I like the idea that it's that anybody who has been involved in any way in nurturing this work can join in the moment on that day when they say this work is of such fundamental importance that we're going to give it a Nobel Prize.
There's also some interesting traditions connected to being at university and being awarded a prize. Svante Pääbo, the 2022 medicine laureate, was subjected to a very wet celebration at the Max Planck Institute in Leipzig. What's going on here?
Svante Pääbo is being thrown into the pond in the middle of his institute.
Why?
Yeah, as you said, a tradition. It's a mark of great respect for, I think, somebody who's achieved something very noteworthy from the institute. And I love the fact that respect can take such a form.
Because, I mean, the water didn't look... I mean, it wasn't the clearest water I've seen in my life in that pond.
No. There are cleaner celebrations in other places or marks of respect. I think in Berkeley you get a parking space if you get a Nobel Prize.
Is it marked in a specific way?
Yeah, it says reserved for Nobel laureates. Institutions around the world have many different ways of, just like families, many different ways of celebrating, many different ways of marking achievement.
What is Nobel Week?
Oh, well, Nobel Week is something that happens a couple of months after the announcements, when the laureates assemble in Sweden, or in the case of peace, in Oslo, to be awarded their prizes. And those days in December when all of that happens are called Nobel Week. They come and they have some parties and they give lectures, which generally summarize the work that has been awarded the Nobel Prize. And it all culminates on the 10th of December in the prize award ceremony in the concert hall in Stockholm, and then the famous Nobel banquet in the Stockholm City Hall, with parallel events going on for peace in Oslo.
And it seems like the ultimate VIP treatment during that week.
Yeah, each laureate gets a so-called attaché, a young person from the Swedish Foreign Service, to be with them for the week and help them. They get a driver, so they get whisked around, being offered glasses of champagne and having conversations with innumerable people. And yes, very much treated as VIPs for the week. And I think it's all a bit of an unusual circumstance for most of them.
Well, let's listen to 2024 chemistry laureate John Jumper, who describes the experience as a little bit like being a rock star.
We arrive and there are people asking for your autograph, kind of stalking outside the hotel. I signed someone's napkin in a restaurant, like this kind of just celebrity and moment. And you meet all these exceptional people, but it's just such a part of the Swedish national identity and culture. And I thought that was a very beautiful thing.
I mean, these are very prominent scientists. Why is this attention such a strange experience for many of them?
Well, who'd know that they were prominent scientists as they wander down the street anywhere else? I suppose some prominent scientists achieve some fame, but most work in relative obscurity, not in their communities where they're fated, but outside of their community. It's not what the world pays attention to most of the time. As we were discussing at the beginning, this is a moment when suddenly the news cycle focuses briefly on something that is unusual, fundamental science.
It's a little bit like a parallel universe, I guess, sort of them step into that celebrity cycle.
Yeah. Nobel laureates are fated in places where there's an interest in what they do. If a Nobel laureate in physics visits a physics department, they tend to get pretty much fated. Mm-hmm. But nobody's going to recognize them down the supermarket. If they go to Nobel Week, Sweden's pretty switched on to Nobel Week, so people tend to know it's going on. There's a general interest. So you just garner a lot of attention. This is not life as it normally is, or as it continues after Nobel Week.
Let's listen to a clip from 2018 and the TV program Nobel Minds, where we hear 4 of the laureates from that year talk about their highlights from the week.
So it sounds like the banquet so far has been the highlight. Was it for you, Professor Frances Arnold?
Well, I have to admit, the banquet was really quite special. But coming from Southern California, I have to say snow. It snowed at the night of the ceremony, and that was just beautiful.
Jim Allison?
For me, the most special moment was when, after the king presented the medal, I looked out where my family was sitting and saw my wife and son wiping tears out of their eyes.
Oh, and you got all your bows right.
Yeah, I got all my bows right.
Quite a procedure, yes. George Smith?
Well, I hate to be a party pooper, but actually, frankly, I think the highlight was the Nobel lecture. It's the thing that will last on as the memories of this celebration begin to fade.
Paul Roma?
All of these parts were wonderful. I liked getting to know a few people here in Sweden. The Alexander, who took our pictures, when we were doing the portraits, it was just fascinating to see how he did his job. I also loved getting to know my driver, who was a woman and also a bodyguard, and she's pretty cool. She's badass.
Yeah, Zainab Badawi there was drawing out some very special moments, rather nicely encapsulate a lot of what goes on during Nobel Week. The ceremony is a very special occasion. It's quite long and it's very grand. Mm-hmm. Yeah, royalty in attendance and lots of people in evening dress. And a concert hall full of people. I love George Smith focusing on the lecture because, that's what it's all about. Mm-hmm. It's about telling the story of this piece of exploration that led to the prize. Mm. It's possible for just the status of Nobel laureate to become the whole thing. Mm. they're a Nobel laureate, therefore they know lots and they're a genius and that's it.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it's all about something that happened before that award was made. And it's really important to know what that something was, what it was that went into all of this. And so telling that story well in the lecture requires great art.
But there's an interesting thing combining that academic thing with this party, to have both of those things and many things in there just to make sure that we're celebrating the right thing.
A lot of people go to a lot of pains to help people actually understand what it is that these prizes have been awarded for. In the Nobel lectures, in material that's distributed to the press, to material that's distributed to the public, in the speeches that are given at the Nobel Prize award ceremony, in the after-dinner speeches at the banquet. If you're listening, you really get the message along with the fun.
An important event during the week for you is Nobel Week Dialogue. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, that was an idea that cropped up in 2012, that the day before the Nobel Prize award ceremony and banquet would be set aside for a meeting, a full-day meeting, linking science and society about some topic of global relevance that was also relevant to the prizes, not that year's prizes, but the prizes in general. And each year it brings together a selection of Nobel laureates and non-laureates to discuss these issues. For a start, that was a novel thing to bring non-laureates into the mix. Until then, it had only been Nobel laureates who'd spoken much during Nobel Week. And we touch on a different topic each year. This year we'll be talking about health come December and how you perhaps move closer towards achieving health for all. We've covered intelligence and food and water and genetics and energy and all sorts of things in the past. And it's streamed by Swedish television and made available.
When you bring in like a rock climber and an athlete to go and speak to a Nobel laureate, then you sort of invite everyone to be part of the scientific discovery or the scientific conversation, I guess. For me, that sounds like a good party.
I think that's beautifully put. And you're right, yes. So at the Nobel Week Dialogue, for instance, indeed, we had Arnold, the free climber, who people know perhaps from the film of him climbing, I think it's El Cap, isn't it?
Terrifying film.
In Yosemite. Yeah. And yes, there he was talking to Nobel laureates. And they were talking about fear at different levels, and combating your fears played into this. For him, the fear he must experience, or seems not to experience, free climbing sheer walls of rock, is obvious to everybody. It's less obvious what the fear is in being a scientist, but there is a danger in going off track, exploring regions of knowledge that nobody's gone down before, and you're kind of exposed because you've sort of taken away your safety net, and if it all goes wrong, then you might not have much to show for it. So it's not your life in danger, but in the worst case, it could be your livelihood, and certainly it could be your reputation.
Sure.
And so actually there was a lot to talk about around that. And I thank you for bringing that up, because it's true. That's exactly what we're trying to do with the Nobel Week Dialogue. We're trying to bring different pieces of society into contact with science in exactly, as you say, a lovely celebratory way.
I want to play you something really beautiful from a Nobel Week Dialogue and see if you have any fond memories of this.
And if there's one thing could do for you, you'd be a wing in heaven blue. Thank you.
Takes me back to my childhood, when I used to go to sleep every single evening as a teenager listening to her. But yes, anyway, sorry.
To Patti Smith, that is. If anyone missed that from that very specific voice.
Exactly.
But why was she there?
Because we could get her. No, well, that's partly true. She was there because it was the year that Bob Dylan had been awarded the prize for literature, and he himself didn't come to Stockholm for Nobel Week. And Patti Smith came to sing A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall at the Nobel Prize award ceremony. But because she was present on the 10th of December, we grabbed her for the 9th of December, and we included her in conversations, and she performed at the Nobel Week Dialogue. Again, it's about making connections across disciplines. Singing is such a celebratory thing to do too. It just reminded me of a laureate called Peter Agre. We were doing an event together in Russia. This was back in 2013, so a different time. He'd been going around to different universities and really enjoying the conversation with the audience in front of him. And all of a sudden he just said, "Do you mind if I sing for you?" And then he sang them a song.
There's sulfur californium and fermium berkelium, and also mendelevium, einsteinium, nobelium, and argon, krypton, neon, radon, xenon, zinc, and rhodium, chlorine, carbon, cobalt, copper, tungsten, tin, and rhodium.
And I thought that was just so lovely. Of course it made them feel special. And what a nice way to celebrate.
Maybe music is a way to celebrate what we can't really put into words in other ways. When you listen to these fanfares during the ceremony, it's also like, how do we explain the magnitude of the situation in other ways than just with these amazing horns?
Well, yes, they certainly elevate everybody, don't they? They elevate the moment. On the theme of celebration, it was the physics laureate Eric Cornell who pointed out that when the Nobel Prize award ceremony is going on in the concert house in Stockholm, you get 2 rounds of applause in that room. The second is from everybody who stands and applauds you. But the first actually comes as they stand and all the seats in the concert hall go up together. It's the back of the chair. So you get this thump from all the chairs in the room as everyone stands, and then you get their round of applause. It's a double celebration.
The room is celebrating as well.
The room is celebrating, exactly. Here we are again, says the concert house. Here we are again, let's celebrate.
We've talked on previous episode about the importance of family to many Nobel laureates when making their discovery, but family members are also a very important part of these celebrations, aren't they?
Yes. In Nobel Week, family members are very much present. Laureates get to bring a certain number of family members to the banquet and often then pay to bring a much larger community along with them. I would go as far as saying that it's hard to imagine being able to concentrate so hard on one's work without the help of your family. If you've got the responsibilities that most people pick up along the way, then if you're going to work as hard as laureates do and be as focused on an area as they are, you need a family to take some of those responsibilities off your plate.
Maybe this is the longest they've ever spent in the company of their families at once, because they've worked so hard and they've barely seen them.
Oh, what a great thought. Yes.
Well, talking about this, I'd like to play you some clips. First, we're going to listen to Victor Ambrose's wife, Rosalind, interviewed at the banquet, and then also John Jumper's daughter, Sarah, both of them from the banquet of 2024.
It's just astonishing how well the whole country celebrates science, even including artists, fashion designers. We just did not expect this whatsoever, so yeah, it's been wonderful. Having the whole family and our lab family, and it's just been wonderful.
Is there anything that you will remember for the rest of your life?
Oh, the lights. The lights were amazing.
Wow, really?
Yeah, look at the ceiling. It's pretty beautiful. And also, the dancers were really talented.
So, what will you tell your brother and sister when you come home?
I'm going to tell them you missed a lot. In the sistery way, of course.
And what went through your mind when you saw your father receive the Nobel Prize?
I was incredibly proud of him, and I was thinking, I want to do that. I'm gonna do that.
So we heard Victor Ambrose's wife, Rosalind, and John Jumper's daughter, Sarah, being interviewed by Victoria Dyring at Swedish television. This may sound a little strange to people listening around the world, but in Sweden, the Nobel Banquet is actually a televised event, religiously watched in its 4 hours entirety by many Swedes.
Yeah, I have friends in small towns in Sweden who watch it every year and enjoy it. It's true. Victor Ambrose's wife was making a lovely point about the fashion designers. That's yet another example of how science is celebrated, and it's not something that normally would get much public attention. I'm sure there are many fashion designers around the world working on scientific concepts or trying to put science into fashion, but most of them don't get seen that widely. Everything's amplified, and the possibilities for amplifying the message around being excited by basic science and expanding fundamental knowledge are so great during this moment, and that's what's so lovely. And as John Jumper's daughter pointed out, they really do put on a good show.
How would you describe the party to someone who might be dying to go?
Is that you, Karin? Are you the one dying to go?
I am dying to go, yeah.
It's spectacular in a very Swedish way. It's not egalitarian. There's a top table, and on the top table royalty sit and laureates and partners of laureates and that sort of thing. But everybody is elevated to a grand status. Is it 1,300 diners or something like that in the room? The place settings, the room, it's all utterly spectacular. And people feel very special sitting there and being part of it. And everybody is, in the most extraordinary way, served almost at the same moment with every course and everything. It's a great moment where everybody is having dinner together. And I really like that relative flatness of the event. The tone is set right at the beginning when the first toast is proposed, which is the moment at which you're allowed to touch your champagne. And that first toast is by the chair of the board of the Nobel Foundation, and they propose a toast to the king.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed Nobel Prize laureates, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me propose a toast for His Majesty the King.
When everybody has sat down after that and thought, well, that's the beginnings of things, then those who've never been before are perhaps surprised by the fact that the king immediately then stands up and proposes a toast to Alfred Nobel.
I would like you all to join me in a toast to honor the great donor Alfred Nobel.
And that, again, epitomizes what this is all about. It's about the legacy of Alfred Nobel and his desire to celebrate great work and great concentration and great curiosity and real endeavor in exploring the world around us. And to put that front and center at the Nobel banquet, it kind of cuts through the pomp of it, if you like, and gets down to the fundamentals. And so that's a great start. And then, there's dancing and there's music and there's glittering everything.
There's also this interesting correlation, I think, between the discoveries and the creativity and the precision of the science and of the exploration and the actual event, that it's also about creating things and it's also mathematical precision in how everything is presented. And it feels like there's a mirror there.
Yes, that's true. It is work that is done properly. And it's pretty important, really.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that isn't. And so maybe it's a bit dull to bring it down to the idea. It's all thorough, but there's a pleasure in thoroughness.
Well, let's listen to an example of that thoroughness while listening to John O'Keefe, who was awarded the Physiology or Medicine Prize in 2014, together with May-Britt Moser and Edward Moser, talking about the dessert in his banquet speech.
The food is, as we would say where I come from, scrumptious. And I think the idea of organizing the dessert in that wonderful pattern of 6 little desserts in the form of a symmetrical hexagonal array, so reminiscent of the grid cells discovered by the Mosers, is nothing short of culinary genius.
That's great attention to detail, isn't it?
Yeah, I cannot say whether that's true that the dessert at his banquet had been inspired by this system for spatial recognition that Edvard and May-Britt Moser found in rats, in the rat brain. If that is what inspired the dessert, then that's nothing unexpected. As you've pointed out, everything is tied together. There's an enormous amount of thought in things. I suppose the desserts at the Nobel banquet could be taken as the ultimate celebration, because that is such a beautiful parade as all the waiters come down this grand staircase in the City Hall with desserts carried aloft on trays. And in the desserts are these sparklers. And the sparklers are somehow magically lit at the top of the stairs and timed to go out precisely as they reach the beginning of the main table of the banquet hall. And so you have this procession of sparklers and just all perfect timing and all very beautiful. It is, I suppose, the single most celebratory moment of the week.
Well, it's interesting because we talk about this grand banquet and all these ceremonies, but there were a couple of years where there was none of this because of the pandemic. And people managed to celebrate anyway. I really wanted to listen to the clip where David McMillan, the 2021 chemistry laureate, talks about how he celebrated with his colleagues in Princeton instead.
My group understands that this is an award for me, but it's our group. It's our group who won this award. And so they feel so excited and so happy about it. So everyone just wants to be there for the day that the ceremony happens, to see each other, to sort of be around and just enjoy that sort of moment. It's going to be fantastic. They all want to also hold the medal. The medal's I don't think they want to see me. I think they want to see the medal, which is great. But the whole thing is just this great celebration, very joyous, for all these people who put in all this hard work.
Laureates get medals and they get replica medals.
Okay.
And the replica medals are for touring, if you like. I was in Colombia the other day and with a laureate, and he had his replica medal with him, and people adore it. They love holding it. They love just being around it, even though it's just the replica. They also panic when they drop the replica medal and it dents, which has happened. But yes, the medal is a symbol. Something that somebody said to me after we went to Columbia with Morten Meldal, chemistry laureate. He visited various universities, and his presence was very important to people. They liked the fact that a Nobel laureate had taken the trouble to come and visit their university. It was very much him and his presence and his energy that was exciting people. But it was also everything we've been talking about around the Nobel Prize, the aura, for want of a better word, around it, but also just the celebration of science and the fact that it connects people in different disciplines, in different areas of life, in different countries. And afterwards, the Dean of Research at one university, University of Antioquia in Medellin, wrote and said that 95% of the students who come to our university are poor. And although they've made it to university, they don't come from backgrounds where university is part of people's experience. And they don't necessarily think it's for them. But by bringing Morten to visit us and by, exposing us to the Nobel Prize and this work, you make them realize that this could be for them, that they're a part of science too. And I guess that is as much as one could possibly hope to achieve with the prize, that it is somehow that inclusive, that a prize for one person, for one piece of work, which seems incredibly exclusive, can make the Dean of Research at a university in Columbia say that somehow this is making her students feel that they are included and see the possibilities. That is just ideal. That's where you want to get to.
What you're describing is the laureates sort of bringing that celebration with them wherever they go after receiving the prize.
Yes, and hopefully, the laureates for sure, definitely, but hopefully it could even touch people without the laureates. The laureates are key, goes without saying, but obviously there's something about the whole edifice of the Nobel Prize which somehow makes people pay attention and, crucially, feel included. You could envisage setting up something that would do the opposite, that would be so exclusive and kind of rarefied that it would sort of make people feel this is not for me, I'm not part of this. And of course there must be masses and masses and masses of people around the world who feel that. But there are also a very large number of people who do feel that somehow this is for them and they are included, and that's great.
Science can be celebrated in many ways that doesn't involve royalty or fancy desserts. Let's listen to 2023 Physiology or Medicine laureate Katalin Karikó talk about how she has been celebrated.
Then they made this Katalin Karikó Appreciation Day, and they were celebrated. They had a T-shirt, and they want to be grateful to somebody. And they sent me pictures when, the children of those elderly people could visit the home and the joy. I was happy that I was part of it. I know that, they celebrated me, but I can tell you that it was more important than any award, including the Nobel Prize. Reading that letter, seeing those pictures.
You can hear that she's very moved there, talking about nursing homes where people were able to survive after the first shot and then being able to meet their families. It's a very interesting way to talk about celebration, I think.
Yes, indeed. in a way, she's fairly rare among laureates that her work had such a direct effect on so many people so fast that the mRNA vaccines changed the course of the pandemic. And people being grateful that lockdowns could finish and people could see each other again and hold each other again. Of course, that's much more important than any prize. Especially for her, because she went through a very large number of years of not that many celebrations. Her case is well known that her work wasn't recognised by her institutions, and she was eventually let go from her university. And she doggedly continued believing that what she was doing was important, and she was right. So in the end, when it comes to celebration, for her it's also, as it is for some laureates, a vindication that in the end, yes, you were right to stick to your guns. Of course, where you have such a direct influence on people, and you can really change people's lives and see that change, well, nothing else really matters. I mean, it's lovely that people celebrate your work, and I guess for certain laureates, it becomes a very big part of their life, because it's easy to let the Nobel Prize take over your life if you let it. But I think for most laureates, it's much more that the real achievement and celebration was the work, and this is a nice extra.
We've been talking about celebrating science here, but the Nobel Prize is also given for literature and peace. Is there a different sort of celebratory vibe for those prizes?
Yes, I'd say there is. I think you have to treat them separately anyway. Literature laureates, of course, tend to be different sorts of people, and so wrong to try and lump them all together. But if your starting point is thinking that the only person to voluntarily refuse to receive a Nobel Prize was a literature laureate, Jean-Paul Sartre, in 1964, that gives you a sort of inkling. I don't think that all literature laureates, well, I know that all literature laureates don't suddenly become ecstatic at the news. Doris Lessing famously didn't seem to be very impressed when she heard the news, although I think she enjoyed it later.
I still have that image of her sitting on her stairs and not being very happy with all the people surrounding her in her home.
That's right. Yes. What was her first response? She just dropped her shopping bags when the journalist told her, and she said, "Oh, Christ, well, I've got the rest, I might as well have this one as well," or something like that. I don't know, which you can take any way you like. You can interpret that one as you wish. I suppose it's a more measured and serious thing with the literature laureates in general, but it's doing the same job. It's making people pay attention to some writing that is probably not that much explored. Peace, it is a different beast. If you give the prize to the World Food Programme for their work in trying to combat starvation and famine, that isn't something that's gone away, as we're all very acutely aware of at this moment. You're sending a signal to the world that this is something that you're celebrating the work of the World Food Programme in trying to help people, and you're highlighting the fact that this is something that really matters. People are, again, measured in their celebration, but you're making a difference. And again, you're making those connections that you were talking about earlier, that connecting different areas of society. Strangely, I was with David Beasley from the World Food Programme 10 days ago at a meeting in Germany. And we were doing a session, and he told a story of how, because I'd phoned him on the morning that the Nobel Peace Prize to the World Food Programme was announced, and he was at that time Executive Director of the World Food Programme. I'd phoned him immediately after the public announcement, and I'd caught him in Niger. We had a very brief conversation about the work that the World Food Programme was doing, but he told this story 10 days ago of that phone call. It illustrated, I suppose, this point about how it can make a difference and connect people, that he was actually sitting with the president of Niger, and apparently he had opposing forces closing in on the capital. And he was telling the president that there were vast numbers of people who were starving, and that if they didn't get food, what choice did they have but to sign up with these rebel forces who were offering food? His phone was on the table in front of him, and it kept buzzing. And he was thinking, who the hell's phoning me in the middle of this important meeting with the president of Niger? I can't, And then apparently an aide burst in through the door, and he looked up at him all angrily. He thought, what are you doing interrupting this meeting? And the aide said, the Nobel Peace Prize. And David Beasley said, yeah, who's been awarded? And they said, we have. And He doesn't know whether that made a difference, but he said he got what he wanted from the president of Niger. So, if you want a celebration for the Peace Prize, there we are.
There we are. Well, let's move back to slightly more straightforward science then. We're starting this scientific season now with the announcements of the new Nobel Prizes, and I'm wondering what are your hopes for this year's scientific celebrations?
First and foremost, give me laureates who are easy to reach by telephone. Because that's going to be my primary job on the announcement days. And then, of course, I hope for science we can all enjoy and a lovely diverse group of laureates who represent the breadth of the scientific community. It's, of course, everybody's wish that the gender balance of the laureates becomes more representative of the scientific community. But also the geographic spread is important. I have this joyous task of going to all sorts of countries which are just full of brilliant people, of course, like everywhere is, but have not yet had any laureates associated with them. And in some of those countries, science is viewed negatively by a large part of the population. And it would make just a terrific difference to have a laureate in science from there, who they could celebrate, and who would be a catalyst for the celebration of science going forward. That is not in any way part of the calculus that the committees use in deciding who gets a prize. It's not about the people, it's about the work.
Also, it's something worth celebrating.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Long live exploring.
You just heard a bonus episode of Nobel Prize Conversations. If you enjoyed these stories, you won't want to miss our upcoming conversations with the 2025 laureates, published as they happen. Adam Smith will be among the first in the world to congratulate this year's new class of laureates. Subscribe today. This special season kicks off on October the 6th. You can follow the 2025 Nobel Prize announcements on nobelprize.org, with live streams and complete prize information. Nobel Prize Conversations is a podcast series with Adam Smith, a co-production of Filt and Nobel Prize Outreach. The producer and host for this episode was me, Karin Svensson. The editorial team also includes Andrew Hart and Olivia Lundqvist. Music by Epidemic Sound. Thanks for listening.